of Tuesday, February 25th, 2014. Roll call.
Johnston here.
Carrillo here.
Gavich here.
Scavidi here.
Malsky here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Dickman and Correll are excused. Item 2 is minutes of the February 11th, 2014 meeting. Motion?
Go ahead. Johnston moves we approve the minutes of the Tuesday, February 11th meeting.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Johnston, aye.
Carrillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Scavidi, aye.
Malsky, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Item 3 is significant common council actions. Carrie?
Common Council approved the following: resolution vacating and discontinuing a portion of a public street in the city of Oak Creek, otherwise known as Glen Oaks Drive. An ordinance amending a section of code to allow for indoor commercial recreation facilities as conditional uses in the M1 district. An ordinance approving a conditional use permit for a restaurant with a drive-through facility at 8750 South Howell. And a resolution approving a certified survey map for the properties at 9859 and 9867 South Chicago Road. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Moving to new business. 4A is a site and light plan review. Reviewing the sign and lighting plan submitted by One West Drexel LLC for Drexel Town Square. Text key number is multiple. And who am I handing it off to? Carrie or Doug? Carrie?
This is a site plan review for sign locations and lighting for the entirety of Drexel Town Square. 11 development and wayfinding signs are proposed with the locations identified on the map in front of you. The yellow circles identify proposed locations for the signs. Main Street entrance will be the location of the gateway sign, which is here identified as G. There are also going to be 3 monument signs. Sign A is going to be located at Drexel Avenue and the Main Street entrance right here. That will be double-sided. It will have a backlit logo, LED, and retailer signs associated with it. Then there will be monument signs B and C. B is located at the intersection and entrance of Drexel and Delco Drive. It will be similar in appearance and look and pretty much serve the same kind of function as the other monument signs, which I would bring up for you if my program was not messing up at the moment. There are also 7 wayfinding signs that are proposed throughout the site. These are identified as the Ws. So there are 2 proposed at Market Street, 3 at the Town Square, 1 at 6th Street, and another one that will be on the outlot side of the property. And these will, some of them will have maps. They will be illuminated there to provide wayfinding for users of the square. There's also some information about updates to the individual monument signs in the DTS MUPDD. Lighting will also be described or explained on the site. There are going to be 2 fixtures throughout the site, ranging in height from 12 to 14 feet tall with decorative kinds of lamps, and then 25 feet tall for the, in your packet, referred to as the Guardco Pure Form. With that, the staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the sign and light plan for Drexel Town Square with the condition that guidelines are established for messaging on the LED electronic sign panels. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Open it up to questions or comments from the commission. Alderman Bukavich.
I guess we'll start with the gateway sign. Nice looking sign. Height. Are we cool with getting UPS trucks and stuff through there? I realize semis won't be coming through, but for most commercial traffic through there, are we okay?
Yeah, that's an 18-foot clearance on that, so any standard vehicle should be able to maneuver that easily.
Okay. And we won't have one on Howell?
No, that's only on the Main Street entrance.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Doug Seymour, Planning Director.
Thank you. Other comments?
Are the letters going to be lit on this sign, or is it going to be illuminated?
I'll actually let Steve Morales with the firm of Rinca-Chung Architecture talk about the specifics and the design details of that sign. And then I'll be happy to answer any questions or address any comments the commission has after that.
Hi, Steve Morales from Rinca-Chung Architecture. The letters on the sign would actually be individually lit from within, behind an acrylic panel.
Okay.
What's the thought process? Well, I probably already know the answer to this. You have Drexel Town Square, one below the top of the sign. You have a retailer. Has there been some sort of arrangement made with that retailer already? Some sort of an agreement?
I can get that. Right, that was a result of some of the negotiations that took place during this entire process, in that the main retailer, one of the main retailers, not by deed restriction, but by agreement, has that top billing over the other retailers in the center. So that is by design.
How does, yeah, hold on one second, Jerry. How does that differ from moving Drexel Town Square up and then giving them the top billing?
They want first of all, it's only on 2 of the 3, the one at the Delco Drive and the one on the Ring Road, which is Susan. Those are the 2 that will feature Meyer in the top sign panel, and that's by
Susan, and what was the other one?
Delco Drive, which is the little stub that comes into the Ring Road.
Okay.
Right there where B is.
Okay.
So those 2 will feature Meyer by what's called an overall easement agreement that was negotiated over a long period of time with Meyer. The one that is A, which is by the entrance to the town square area, that will have the hotel as the top billing.
Okay, so it's basically based on geography, what's the closest?
Geography, size, the need for people to recognize where it's at, things like that. But the Meyer one is definitely because of their prominence in the development.
And also, when we were reviewing this, actually, we considered that fact, and the proportions of the sign would have been thrown off had the LED panel been on top. And there was a bit of discussion regarding this, but we feel comfortable that the design of the sign as it's laid out, even with the retailer on top, is appropriate for Drexel Town Square, and we do endorse that.
What about the design element? Maybe this is for gentlemen in the audience. What sticking the Drexel logo out off to the, in this case, the right, versus just putting it, incorporating into that panel that's on the sign? What's the thought process there?
It was to give it some more prominence by separating it from the rest of the retailer signs so that it wouldn't blend in and it'd be something that you'd see. It would also be illuminated and it'd be something you'd see off to the side, so it would grab your attention.
Okay.
And also, given the number of stores that are going to be in this area, we really are, the sign space is at a premium for retailers, and that's important to them. So both, I think, aesthetically, it balances and also makes it stick out more prominently. But we just need that many panels, and we're still going to be short for retailers on Main Street.
Okay. Alderman Bekavich?
Jerry, that LED panel, Drexel Town
Right.
Square, will that be programmable to do temperature or time or something?
It'll be state of the art, programmable. It will also feature the names of stores that don't get a panel. Now we're not going to do sale and things like that, but we do need to cycle through so that stores get some display.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
But I imagine there would be a panel, where for 15 seconds it can say time and temperature. That's not.
Okay. That's it for now, thank you.
So that's what, about roughly 25% of that sign is the Drexel Town Square thing? Panel, roughly?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Johnston?
As long as we're on the LED panels, let's stay on that. Who's going to control the sign?
The association.
Association?
Yeah, right now it'll be the developer, and then when the developer is no longer an owner of property in there will be an owners association that will have a staff person that will control it. I do recognize that we need to develop a plan, so there will be policies incorporated into that plan.
Is it going to be the LED where you can run pictures and do all crazy things on it? Or are we looking at just letters here?
I think we're looking at just letters.
Okay.
That would be, yeah.
All 3 of them would run the same? Or would they all be programmed different?
I think they would be programmed differently.
Okay.
For instance, the one over on Susan and Howell, probably wouldn't want to feature a bunch of the Main Street retailers because there's such a geographic separation. There's where you might do more events, community events, Drexel Town Square events, things like that.
Is City of Oak Creek going to be on any of the signs?
I hadn't thought about it.
You mean City of Oak Creek events?
No.
Either events and also to the Civic Center,
To the extent that.
Library, City Hall.
Good point.
If there's civic messaging that's part of the town square events, for example, or events happening at anywhere within the library, city hall, we're hoping to have the discussion as a member of that association, and being property owners there, that we'd have the opportunity to do some civic messaging as well.
I think to Brian's point, are people going to see these signs and know that City Hall and Library are in Drexel? Is that what you're asking?
One
Brian?
of the panels will be dedicated to
Okay.
the City of Oak Creek for the City Hall and the library, again, because of its prominence in the development.
Okay. I'm going to jump to Commissioner Chandler.
From the information in our packet, my understanding was that the planning department wanted the Drexel Town Square at the top. Is that correct?
That's not entirely correct. That was,
Okay.
as is the case with a lot of these staff reports, we want to bring to you all of the different opinions that were presented during our staff review meetings, which includes planning department, engineering department, streets department, most cases fire, number of different departments. And that was one of the items that was brought out as a possible design change. There was no requirement for that. It was just something that was brought up at that staff meeting. And, we do like to bring you alternate opinions to the Plan Commission. Again, however, as a planning department responsible for making the recommendation to the Plan Commission, and in lieu of all the factors in the Drexel Town Square, the design of the sign, we felt it was appropriate that the sign that you see this evening be approved by the Plan Commission for those entrances.
My recommendation, since it's all about the Drexel Town Square, I would say that should be first, because we're not selling Meyer, or what was the other sign? The Civic Center?
Hotel,
Or the
there's a
hotel.
number of them.
Yes, I mean, they're prominent vendors. They will be prominent vendors in the area. So I would recommend that the Drexel Town Square goes first, because that's what's most important, because that's kind of what we're selling here. And then, of course, because they are prominent vendors, to have them next in line.
Yeah, and we actually did, again, that gathered a lot of discussion, a great deal of discussion at staff level, and we just felt that, the design of the sign would be so altered that the proportions of that wouldn't look as nice, quite honestly.
May I?
Yep.
I think we're doing ourselves a great disservice by showing Drexel Town Square on that sign, because I think it'll be highly unlikely that you will ever see Drexel Town Square on that LED light. That is meant to have messaging on behalf of the retailers, on behalf of the events. That's why we have the Drexel Town Square emblem and sign off to the right. So I would say that, you will never see that.
So that's just,
So why do
It's
we have it
repetitive and it's
there?
redundant and it's unnecessary.
But why do
We
we have
also
it
think
there?
that
Well-
we also think that from a design perspective, go ahead, I'm sorry, Rob.
Go on.
We solicited input from sign contractors, the design people. I think it helps to split the sign up. It makes it a little bit top-heavy if you do the LED on top.
So when you say you'll never see it, what do you mean?
You'll never see Drexel Town Square as part of that messaging. It's not needed. What you'll see there is, geez, I gotta think of a name of a
Farmer?
Jerry's barber shop. Maybe it's because I'm not big enough to have my own retail sign below, but I'm in there, and so I would like occasional repetition of the fact that I am in there. That will take the place of one of those signs.
Or a farmer's market Saturday.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Farmers market, library events, things like that. You won't see just Drexel Town Square up there because it's right next to the emblem and the name Drexel Town Square.
Okay.
We'd have been better off putting gibberish there, because that, it's really going to be about messaging for events and stores that are in there that don't have the honor to be on the affixed sign.
Okay, I hear you.
so just so I'm clear, there's no store specials on there?
Well, again, the policies haven't been drafted, but we read the report and we agree that that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I don't want to see like, 6 packs of Coke, 3,
No, I agree.
whatever they are.
And
I
in
hate
the case of, Meyer has no authority over the messaging on these boards, only the placement of their panel at the top.
Commissioner Carrillo.
You answered one of my questions, whether there would be sales and things like that on the message board. It would be more, I think I've read in here, more the community information to get out.
No, we won't do sales.
Okay.
It just,
And another question, I think I know the answer, but where we see this, this font that says retailer, I'm assuming it will be their logos that are placed in there?
Correct. It would be their logos or however they choose to represent the best version of their logo. So if they have a logo that's pretty small, it wouldn't just be centered there. They'd fill out the whole panel, but it'd be the name of the retailer itself.
And so we would alter their logos so that they would fit? Because it looks really nice and clean this way. But once you start putting the logos in there, it's not going to be as clean.
Right. There'd have to be some thought into how those logos are placed in there so that they're legible to people who are reading the sign and also don't give an imbalance to the sign.
Would we have control, I'm sorry, Don, would we have control over the font size or the font used in these various panels?
I would say as owner, the owner would have more control over that. I get a little bit tricky when you as a municipality start to govern it to that detail. Certainly, the owner, being the owners association or One West Drexel for the time being, would have the initial approval over those details and with respect to the logos and the actual text of that signage.
one thing I'd like to offer is that we came tonight with the overall general design. These signs won't be functioning until May of a year from now, 2015. There is time for input, and I hadn't even thought about a sign operating policy. We will interact with city staff on that and try and come up with a reasonable thing. We don't want it to be cluttered either. Signage is taking on a whole science, but I think it's a little premature. At this point, we're looking for the general infrastructure for the sign.
Don, do you have another
Right,
question?
but in turn, you're signing contracts and you're bringing people in, and that's going to be part of what they get to develop in here. So we kind of want to talk about it at least.
Well, again, we can't sign contracts on these because these are the folks that are in the Main Street buildings. Those aren't even physically designed yet, so we would not commit on that. And don't forget, each of the businesses that's in what we call the suburban outlets gets their pedestal sign. So again, we think this is a year from now that we'll be standing here talking about signage for those businesses.
Okay, and I can, my suggestion, especially when we go to these smaller signs where we have the arrows and the directional signage,
Oh, the wayfinding?
is not to use the logos there and to use just plain, text, just so that it would be legible from a distance. Being a graphic designer, I understand that there's circle logos, there's, many different kind of logos that might not work as well as if it said the name of the restaurant.
Right.
Alderman Bekavich?
Just to weigh in on this sign, I actually agree with Mr. Frankie with the design of this. If it's a major anchor tenant and it's in the area, whether that be Myers or the hotel or whoever it might be, I can see them getting the top spot, and I do think it breaks it up. Drexel Town Square was put in there as some sort of generic message holder. I get that. And then the way the retailers drop down, I actually really like that. As far as the fonts go, some stores have different type of script. I get that. It's part of, the Men's Warehouse puts their stuff in, and it might be different than Red Robin. And these are all generic names I'm throwing out. This has nothing to do with anybody that's in there. But again, not so much the symbols, but, that's unique to that store. I don't have any heartburn over that. As far as the wayfinding signs go, I do agree with Dawn, just kind of generic restaurant this way, restrooms that way, Town Square. I guess, we invested some money on wayfinding signs on the expressway and to point us to City Hall. I almost think we should have one out on Drexel, even if it isn't on the Town Square property, but maybe, I know we can't do it on the islands, that's a bad place, but
No, we can.
somewhere before the first turn on 6th Street to direct people that way, the blue informational signs where it says Library, City Hall. you know, we don't want to pop a way sign out on the corner before you hit the arch, but I do think we should have something.
We do have considerable flexibility with respect to wayfinding signage on Drexel Avenue because it is a city street. So I wouldn't discount the possibility of having that type of thing on Drexel, be it in the median. I mean, we've seen in medians on other county roads, not typically state highways, but I think something attractive could be designed before you, for instance, before you even get underneath the bridge and go east of the bridge.
Yeah, and I agree. It could be that far back, even when you get off the interchange, you know, pointing them east from whichever direction they get off, so.
We certainly recognize the city's got the right and ability to put the signage on Sixth Street. I think most people we would like to direct that way, but on the other hand, the retailers like the traffic going in front of them as well. So it's a little bit of give and take, but
Agreed.
you know, there will be a sign on the monument sign for City Hall and the library, but if the city wants to put one on Sixth Street as well as further to the west.
Will the wayfinding signs be illuminated or no?
Well, that's my question. but-
Yeah, they're backlit. So the restaurant, the Arrow, the retailers, so at night you'll be able to see those.
Because once again, I don't know how it's going to play out, but maybe we'll have multiple restaurants in different directions. That could be a little tricky that way, but
Correct.
that's it for now.
Alderman Mahowski.
Yeah, Doug, in front here, we have signs that tell what's going on. Will there be a sign, monument sign over at the Drexel Town Square like that? I seem to have forgotten.
Well, one of the things that, when we're talking about that plan, guidelines for the programming of the sign, we would like to have the ability to do some civic messaging there, probably not to the extent that we do it, obviously. Well, we don't do it here much anymore because the sign's broken, but we do have an agreement, for instance, with the community center that gives us a certain amount of messaging content. And I would hope that we could work out something that would have that same ability to do that on at least the Drexel Avenue LED signs.
You know, for what it's worth, I don't know. To me, that mixing in this library functions, the events that happen over at City Hall, mixed in with John's House of Prime Rib, just doesn't seem to doesn't seem to cut it for me. I thought all along, I thought there was going to be one sign dedicated specifically to City Hall that just did with events for the City Hall and Library, along with the one over on Howell Avenue. I mean, it seems strange to me that I don't have something that directs people to an event happening on on Drexel, but I have something on Howell Avenue that says, well, go to City Hall or go to the library. Just doesn't seem right to me.
And I might be wrong, but nothing precludes us from doing that.
Not at all.
In this agenda item. We could still put our own sign and put anything we want on it. Commissioner Johnson?
On the big monument signs, you know, I opposed these monument signs when we came through the PUD. I don't like the retailers' names out there. To me, this should just be a Drexel Town Square. There's enough signage out there. I don't like all the sign clutter. Like Myers Fueling Stations, there's 3 signs on their canopy, 2 signs on the building. There's a monument sign for their gas pumps. Now we're going to put their name on this huge monument sign as well. That's a lot of Myers on one corner. And we're also going to have them over on Delphi Way. Just not a fan of the retail signs out there. The only place I think it makes sense is on Main Street, because there's a lot of businesses there that you won't see driving down the street. The outlots there on Drexel and Howell are all going to have monument signs. They're all going to have signs on their buildings. You're going to be able to see those and recognize where those stores are. Same thing with the wayfinding signs. I think those are overkill. I mean, these are pedestrian signs. You're not going to see them driving down the street. You're only going to see them walking. First question I come up with is who's going to maintain the signs, because businesses are going to come and go. Who's going to change the signs out when somebody leaves and somebody new comes in? I find the TSMS confusing on the signs, on the wayfinding signs. That's
If I may, I mean, the use of major retailer signs is not atypical for a shopping center or a town square. I mean, you can point to any number of occasions, instances, Southridge being probably the most obvious example. When they redid that, just not too long ago, that was one of the major things they did, is to upgrade the sign packages at the site entrances. And it's not a case where these are billboards necessarily for the businesses that are there, but it directs people to the appropriate entrances. It lets people know what's in the center. And I certainly understand what you feel might be excessive signage at this location. I think the main goal is to get a signage plan which is a consistent and aesthetic sign package that we're not. You have to have. You're creating a part of the creation of the Drexel Town Square. Remember, we were mixing the economics versus the town square setting, and because I feel you a little bit, Brian, but I think that you need to have a comprehensive sign package with your major retailers at the site entrances, and I think that I don't see anything here which I would call overkill.
Jerry?
Chair, he made a lot of comments about signs, and I'm totally lost as to which signs he's objecting to. Could you kind of walk through those so I can at least answer your
The
concerns?
three big monument signs.
And these are the guys who at city, traffic engineers that put 31 this way, 31 this way, So I mean, signage is.
We got enough signs with.
All right,
signs. I
well,
don't
but
need
again,
more retail signs.
everybody wants this place to be successful, and stores need to be recognized. But anyway, I'd like to.
The first one are the big monument retailer signs.
This one here.
Yep, that one there.
What don't you want on there?
Retailer names. I would prefer it just to say Drexel Town Square, and that is the destination that you're going to, because there's enough other signs on the buildings and everything else out here.
The buildings face Main Street. These won't be for the outlots.
Myers is on that one.
Well, again,
Exactly.
Brian, guess what? They get to rule. They were one of the first ones in. They required it.
But that's a 200,000 square foot building. You can see it from Howell. You can see it from Drexel. They have their signs all over their
Okay,
buildings.
but let's talk about the other retailers that you object to.
Are any of the outlots
No,
on there?
no.
So these are all just Main Street. So if I'm on Howell Avenue,
You get a monument sign, you get your building sign, that's it.
and the same thing at Delco.
Pedestal sign, I'm sorry.
And same thing at Delco. Those are the same, going to be the same advertising on Delco.
Don't know.
Yeah.
If you go out on Blue Mountain Road and take a look at like that new development that's just north of Brookfield Square on the north side of the road, I mean, those buildings are right up to the sidewalk line, and they still have a monument sign with all their names on it. Signage is very important to retailers. And in terms of who's going to change out the letters when businesses change, the Owners Association. I mean, this has got to be managed and operated. We can't just walk away and let people do it. It's going to have a management program in place.
Yeah, Main Street's the one street that I think that, the retailer signs work, because that's where you're directing them to. And there's a lot of businesses in there that you're not going to see unless you drive down Main Street. The other businesses all have more than enough signs and locations where you're going to be visible from the main street.
I would say that's.
I respectfully disagree.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. That's your opinion. They have more than enough. We're here to, these businesses are here to sell their product, and then whatever we can do to make that happen and make it a success is what we should do. It seems like a lot of signs, but when you've been out to Drexel Town Square site, that's a big site.
It's 60 acres of developable land.
There's a lot of space between with these signs, and we want people to, when they're driving by, that they may not even know what's in Drexel, we want them to know what's there and what they can shop at. So, it seems like a lot, but I think given the size and scale of Drexel Town Square, it makes sense. And frankly, the businesses have a right to do business and to tell people that they are on the site. My opinion. Commissioner Seifert.
I have a question on the street signs themselves, identifying the streets. I noticed on the wayfinding signs that the street number is very small, somewhat difficult to read. I see you have like 6th Street, for example, stands out. But what about some of the other streets that you have?
That's more so as locating you in what part of the Drexel Town Square development you are. That's not meant to be a street sign in and of itself. There will be separate street signs. These are simply locating you in the right area so you understand where you are.
Well, I just wondered if you were tying the street sign in with those signs, the way you put them up there.
No, these would be separate of the street signs.
Okay. Commissioner Chandler.
For the individual monument signs, so each business or vendor gets one of these signs?
The pedestal signs?
Yes.
I erroneously called it a monument sign.
Oh, okay.
These are pedestal signs.
So each business would have one of these signs?
The ones that have suburban outlots.
Actually, I mean, they'll have a pedestal sign on Howell Avenue and a smaller pedestal sign on Town Square Drive, just to denote where the entrances are, because there are some common entrances. If you can pull up the site plan. That's correct, right, Steve?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which one's Town Square Drive?
The ring road, as we called it.
So they'd have these retailers would have a monument sign, or I'm sorry, pedestal sign on Howell Avenue or Drexel Avenue, and a smaller pedestal sign along Town Square Way at their entrance to their parking lot.
Which is very typical of
Yes.
Town Square, shopping center, whatever you want to call it. Anything else, Commissioner Siebert?
No.
Oh, were you up? Who asked that question?
Yeah, that was me. I do have another question
Sure.
about the what is it called? Wayfinding signs. I know on the map there are only 6, but you identified a 7th location. Where was that location again?
Seventh location was actually on the area of in the area of the outlots, but that hasn't been identified yet.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
So is that off of Town Square Way?
It would be.
It would be. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Carrillo.
I have a couple of questions. I, like Bryant, feel that there's going to be a lot of signage and there's going to be a lot of logos scattered throughout this facility area. Have we thought about on the major signs using the logos in black and white? So they're classic. It's not a bunch of colors coordinating with each other. It's a nice, we've seen it done a million times before so that it stays nice and clean and that it complements each other no matter who it is, whether it's a dry cleaner or...
We have enough challenges in attracting national retailers, and when you start telling them you've got to be black and white, they will find a different location to go to in Milwaukee Metro. They don't have to do that, and they won't do that
Just on the monument sign, 3
anywhere.
of them.
Their signage is their brand. It's what
Absolutely
gets, and they don't mess with it. They don't distort it. They don't color it. It is what it is.
Use black and white many
No, absolutely not. If you take a look at these contracts that we're looking at that we have to try and agree to, they have the gold.
Can we ask, or you don't even want to try to? I mean, it doesn't necessarily.
How come we didn't
leave it
ask
to the
that?
artist,
How come we
you know?
didn't ask that of all the businesses on Howell Avenue that have their own colored signs? There's going to be a lot more signage on Howell Avenue south of us than there is in this development.
If I may, again, a little uncomfortable when we start talking about colors and messaging. Certainly, and I agree with you, I have seen some developments which have had uniform sign colors, looks great. But I suspect that was a condition of the building owners or development owners, and not necessarily the municipality, because I think that the city attorney would tell you that you can regulate a lot of things, but the messaging and changing someone's brand is a little bit of a slippery slope.
Uniformity is a great thing, but it doesn't make your sign stand out. It doesn't make people want to go eat at your restaurant versus another place. It doesn't make people want to shop at your store versus another store. There's a reason why they have those logos and that branding. We get yelled at in the city when we deviate from our brand, and we just created it.
You know, and I guess I would pose that same question. I mean, would you feel comfortable having just a black and white Oak Creek logo?
Well, if it matched all the other ones, of course. I mean, it would be attractive. On another subject, the pole banners. I saw on the light poles the idea that we will have pole banners. Can we tell first of all, why only on one side and not a double banner? And then who will control those, and how will those be taken care of, and what kind of message will be on them?
I think the depiction, the elevation drawing just depicts the facts that they can have banners, and ideally I think we would have banners, whether they're one-sided, two-sided, hasn't been determined yet. But that messaging would be, I mean, it's a public street. We would work closely with the Building Owners Association as well as the city to come up with appropriate messaging for that.
Could be seasonal.
Definitely.
Could
But
be,
it would have to comply with city ordinance because it is public right-of-way, as Doug pointed out.
Right, and we've addressed it with the MATC and what we let them have last year.
These would be city-controlled.
Because sometimes that is also a form of advertising for the businesses that would be on that street. And, that could be used, well, just making sure that there's some.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't use that as specific advertising, just, not to go into too much detail, but we looked into that a few years past for some of the Howell Avenue businesses. The fact that it was a public street and the nature of the competition really didn't lend itself to having individual names on there. But I think more in messaging in terms of seasonal and doing some nice graphic design as part of that is more appropriate than highlighting individual retailers there. Because you'll remember that they will have, I mean, these aren't the only signs that these retailers will have on Main Street. I mean, there's I think, a much more strict design aesthetic to the types of signs that they can have, awning signs, canopy signs, or along Main Street. So they'll have signage right there. So I think it's more having a design of those banners which is complementary to the entire development rather than trying to make those specific to any one business on Main Street.
I have one more question. Just so I can better understand, when we talk about the businesses on Main Street, how many are we talking about? If you had to guess. We're talking about 10, 20?
My guess is 15 would probably be about a reasonable number.
Okay, so with 15 businesses, and we're looking at the monument signs that, especially that major one, only has 4 slots underneath it.
No, this one here.
Yeah, well, we were talking about the other large one too. Right, who gets those 4 bottoms?
That I don't know at this
Okay,
point.
so it's whoever,
Again,
I mean, if we have 15, are we?
you guys are so far ahead of us on how we use these signs. We just know we need signage. We agree that a sign policy needs to be developed. We're just trying to get the darn infrastructure in, and Mother Nature decided to deck us this year.
aren't we really talking about the size and scope of these signs and the location and not colors and those types of things? And
Well, I
a
think
lot of
color, we want the general concept to be acceptable, to the Plan Commission. But in terms of, the use, especially of the monument signs, B and C, is it? I always forget. The ones that are not on Main Street.
Yep.
We will take the Plan Commission's concerns into account and try to figure out a way to better use those. But I do not see, if Jerry's Bar and Grill has got a pedestal sign and a little identification sign and a sign on the building, that he should have a sign on the monument sign as well.
Right, and I'm just afraid that with 15 retailers, then we're dividing up those 4 bottoms, putting 3 on each line, and it becomes very.
Again, I don't think that Main Street businesses will have their name. They'll only be on this one here.
Okay.
They won't be on those other. That other one, I'm not sure how we'll use those bottom signs at this point. I wish I knew. We hadn't thought about it at this point.
Okay.
But with the good conversation, we'll take that into account as we develop the policy manual.
Alderman Bekavich?
Again, I guess I wanted to get us back on topic. We're not really here to design and discuss colors as much as we are the concept of the signs and the placements of them. Again, I think for general practice, I think they're designed well. Again, I'm a fan of signage. If you go kitty corner to Drexel Town Square, there is a sign there, and I know it's not a pretty. It's an establishment that's not in the league of Drexel Town Square. Let's put it that way. But their signage there depicts whatever business is there. If you're Caldwell Banker, you have a definite logo and what have you. Everybody wants that. So I think that'll work out. I think the important thing, though, is the size, the shape, and if that's aesthetically pleasing for Drexel Town Square. And in my mind, I'm okay with that. I actually really like the town square with the tree and the emblem off to the side. I think that depicts what Drexel Town Square is, and it's been our emblem for a few years, and I'm glad to see we're sticking with it.
Alderman Mahowski?
I was going to say that in regard to color of signs, other planning commissions over the years, have had long discussions going to 11 o'clock at night or even longer in regard to what color the building should be, what color the signage should be, et cetera. And ultimately, after going till midnight, it always came back down, look, they've got a brand, they've got colors, they're going with them, or they just don't want to be here. So I just want other planning commission members to know that there has been discussion about it, and it went on quite a bit. My one question, though, is what's the difference between a pedestal sign and a monument sign? Is it just the height, or is this just are we just two different terms for
they're
the same thing?
interchangeable.
Okay.
One's on a pedestal, one's a monument.
I use it to differentiate between the general large sign, which is multi-tenant, and the individual sign that is shorter to the,
Oh, okay. When you say it like that, I see at least where you're coming from.
and it's not listed that way. so
All right,
it's my-
thank you.
yeah.
Commissioner Chandler?
Can you give me a little detail on the different types of lights? 2 types were identified here, but I noticed
Oh.
you use them in different locations. So I just wanted
talking
to
about
know.
the streetlights.
Yes, the street lights, yeah.
Right, there are 2 different types of streetlights for the public streets in Drexel Town Square, and as a matter of fact, in some cases for the private parking lots. The first, which you see here, is the Pure Form.
Yes.
Brian, Guardco Pure Form. Let's just go back. That is very reminiscent of a lot of the lights that we already have in the city, the newer lights that we have in the city. A sleek, modern-looking fixture that we've had experience with, and no, we have not.
Not yet.
Oh, these are the LEDs?
These are the LEDs.
Oh, okay.
These will be on Ryan Road with the reconstruction, and also at Oakview Business Park will be the same light.
But these are more typical of what you see on major arterials, and these would be for, I believe, portions of Town Square Way, whereas the more decorative lights, the cyclone fixtures, which you see here, are ranging from 14 to 16 feet in height. These are going to be along the more pedestrian areas, Main Street, the Town Square, the areas adjacent to City Hall, Library. Again, a different level of lighting, and that's aesthetic, and that was very intentional. It's meant to let you know that you're in a very different area than you are if you're on Howell Avenue or even in some of the outlot commercial areas, and it's a little bit nicer, setting more of a residential scale to it. And even within that, you've got two different mounting heights for that based on the application. I think in most cases, right around the square, I think we're at 14 feet, whereas we'll go a little higher in some of the areas, for instance, 6th Street in certain areas.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnston?
The Pureform lights are very similar to the lights that are on Drexel Avenue. Same manufacturer. It's just this is the LED version of that light, so it'll be similar to that. I think we've changed all the pole heights to 14 feet.
Are they all 14s now?
Yeah, and then the Pureform lights will be a 25-foot pole.
And for the public, the advantages of LED are?
Cost savings.
Operational costs.
Operational cost savings. Also looking at the possibility of dimming the lights down at night, save additional costs. So.
Cool. Alderman Mahowski?
Brian, are you talking, when you said the lights are similar to what's on Drexel, the new lights on Drexel?
The new lights on
Okay,
Drexel.
just want to make sure,
Yep.
not the old ones.
Yep.
Thanks.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, motion on 4A.
Oh, I do have
Go ahead.
one additional question. Just, can you clarify the messaging on the LED screen again? Because I know we're voting on that.
Again, it would be store names, events, things like that. No grapes, $2.99 a pound. Leinenkugel's 6-pack. It's got to be a store or an event.
And events throughout the entire area. So for,
By the entire, you mean the entire community?
yeah,
I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. I can't see why not. But
Okay.
again, we certainly want to do the farmer's market because that's going to be, their only signage.
at the basic level, Drexel Town Square events, and if we do put up our own sign somewhere on Drexel, then we would put our city stuff, big city stuff, celebration stuff on that sign.
And then we're not precluding it from putting it on the other. I just, again, don't know how many messages we can cycle through at any particular time, but I understand, they would be important to have that on there, especially for the major events.
Okay, and then color again? What color would this be?
The lighting itself?
Yes, the lighting.
Multicolored. It would be. It'll be an LED sign, so it'll have a variety of colors. It won't be one color.
Okay, thank you.
Although the only thing I note about that is the city does have rules with respect to how interchangeable copy and LED signs are displayed in terms of the motion and the time at which you can change messaging and the color of the light. So that will be subject to our existing codes.
Commissioner Carrillo?
Questions answered.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Motion on 4A.
Kokavich will move that the Plan Commission approve the sign and light plan for Drexel Town Square with the conditions and guidelines are established for messaging on the LED electronic sign panels.
Can I make a
Certainly.
suggestion? Should we also include per the requirements of the city in there? So we can make sure it sticks to the Oak Creek standards?
Well, we would assume that would be the case with anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yes, that is actually that's something that they would have to do anyway, and it's part of the DTS requirements, so,
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Thank you.
Where were we at? We had a motion? Who seconded?
Malsko second it.
There you go. Roll call.
Johnston, no.
Carrillo, no.
Kokavich, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Malski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, no.
What was that, 4-3?
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
4-3.
Okay. Thank you. Say hi to Matt Rinko for me. I think, you mind if we move C and D up? And then we'll do the Plan Commission presentation on Drexel Town, unless somebody has, are you doing that, Jerry?
I was going to answer the Plan Commission.
All right, we'll keep it where it is. All right, we'll go to 4B, which is an update on the Drexel Town Square in Drexel Town Square. So whoever's handling that.
Do you want to handle it? Oh, sure.
I'll start. And throughout the process of conceptualizing the vision and carrying out the planning for Drexel Town Square, the town square obviously has been the focal point for this development and really was a terribly important part of the identity that the City of Oak Creek and its development partners are trying to create with this unique and very forward vision development. That is why you've seen various renditions throughout of Drexel Town Square, I mean, throughout the last year and a half, 2 years. But one thing which really hasn't changed is that central town square and that really defining factor of the Main Street and the position of the City Hall Library in relation to the square and Main Street. So it's a very important piece of the puzzle, and a lot of thought has gone into the design of that. And we do have kind of the Rinka Chung Architects and Steve, on behalf of Matt as well, has put a lot of work into designing that and to make that a very active, a very, again, integral part of the entire development. We just wanted to walk you through this evening what some of those major elements of that were, and recognizing that this isn't the final design necessarily. That there might be a few changes to it, but it's really advanced to the point where we're comfortable in presenting you what we feel are going to be the final, more or less the main components of the town square, and like to just present those to you, walk you through those, and get your summary action, answer any questions that you might have with that. I mean, you can see on some of the on some of the photos, you can, and it's hard to see here, but I'm passing around kind of a key so you can see that, and you can have reference that later on. Some of the images of what we think town square could be. Just to orient you, this would be 6th Street, would be on your west, Market Street on the east, Town Square Way, and I believe this is Clock Tower Place, and the Library City Hall would be on the south. Again, Main Street would be in this location. Always envisioned as a place for civic gatherings, your concerts, your farmers market's been mentioned, I mean, art fairs, but also a place that you're going to have a pretty significant town green or a lawn area. Again, it could be used for concerts, could be used just for people as a more or less as a park. And I don't want to say public park because there's an important distinction that this is not a public park per se. It is owned. Is it owned by the association? It'll be owned by the association, managed by the association, so that they would program that so that that doesn't fall upon the city. You can see in the middle, you've got an open area that could be used for concerts. It could be used. I've even heard the mayor mention, movie nights or things of that nature. Path network that's been designed to provide access from all 4 points. You've got the residential areas off to your west and to the north. Very formal access on Main Street going down to the tower element at the library and City Hall. This is an area that, I'm not sure if we show it on this, but one of the areas that's been talked about as being a potential ice skating rink in the wintertime. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Moving to the west, you see these areas in here, always been kind of thought as an area for a splash pad. I can see that represented by some fountains area and an actual splash pad. There, you see some areas there where you could have, the giant chessboards and with the giant chess pieces, just some activations, some really easy things they can do to activate the square, bring people, bring some attention to that. Some interesting things that you wouldn't necessarily see at Miller Park or any one of our neighborhood parks, because it's different in that its setting is very much urban. And I would liken it to Red Arrow Park downtown, where you do see the skating rink. See just a lot of activity in those type of urban parks. You'd have opportunities for some type of art installations, be it, I've heard it mentioned, maybe you have a place where you can honor your local sports legends or what have you, or you can have some areas, some pedestals that are set aside for public art installations. Even heard possibilities of having some type of historical markers or some type of ode to some of the manufacturing that's taken place on the site in the past. So, you do have options there. We wanted to just bring it to your attention that, this is a very flexible space that really can adapt to the program that's established by the Property Owners Association in conjunction with working with the city. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Again, just the same thing in kind of showing you the dimensions and in plan view. We can move on past that one. There's snowing. This, I believe, it goes into the different types of lights, and there'll be lights that are different. We're not going to have first of all, there won't be any of the pure forms here, so there just won't. On the exterior, we'll see the 14-foot cyclones, but interior to that, you can have some more specialized lighting that's take place, whether it be bollard lighting or some recessed lighting, which might be highlighting. Are there flag poles here, Steve? There'll be flag poles in there, or just kind of highlighting some of the landscaping in there. Next, please. There's some detail. Part of this, you'll have some actual bench seating that's built into the planners, and the design is going on right now. And maybe if you have questions about that, I'll have Steve address those for you. Next. Again, benches, planters, and those details we're working on and we'll continue to work on. Just showing you how it might set up for something like an art fair or a farmer's market. The stalls and the whole square was designed so that you could pull in your food trucks or what have you and still have plenty of space. Didn't count, but you can see there's ample space to have your booth set up for your art fair, your farmer's market, while still leaving the bulk of the square available. And if you take that, again, towards more of a concert setting, you can see that, I guess at maximum capacity, if everyone pulls up a blanket and sits on the lawn there, you can have up to 2,100 people there. So I think we're showing 400 people in this area, which is probably more typical of the types of events that you would see at Drexel Town Square.
And just for comparison, the best concerts we have at Community Center are 1,000 people.
Yeah. Next, please. Is that it? Again, pretty excited about this as a real organizing feature of Drexel Town Square. It allows us to do a lot of things, working with the Property Owners Association, some of which have been done in Oak Creek before, others haven't. But we think it's a great way to bring the community into the center and give the community opportunities like a farmer's market, which we really haven't had before.
Which is one of the things that people most talk about when we talk about having a very large public square, is those uses that, why does South Milwaukee have a farmer's market, we don't, those kind of things. One thing you didn't mention was the logo kind of in that center stage area. That's actually, I think it's if it goes through, it's stamped concrete or something like that.
Colored concrete, sort of integrally colored.
Okay, so it's in the concrete.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's a decision you have to make based on the price of it, but it's a great way to incorporate our brand into the city.
Probably wouldn't see it unless you're flying over, but that's important too.
Yeah, as Alderman Bacavia says, we won't be changing the brand for a while. Not unless we want to dig it up. You want to entertain questions?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Any questions, comments?
Doug, it's a really nice design as it's coming together. I like the features for the kids, the splash pad, the checkerboards, and especially these built-in benches with the dual uses, whether you're sitting there having a sandwich or a coffee, or you're playing chess or backgammon or whatever those games might be. Those are in other major metropolitan cities that I've been to, and I think that's a really nice feature.
Well, it's important, and just digress for just a little bit. And we found that when you've got the successful public spaces aren't successful because of, $1 million features. They're successful because of the little things, a number of little things, whether it is, like you said, the game boards, or just having places for people to sit and chat. I mean, it's a number of small things which will ultimately determine the success of that public space.
And, and it opens up a lot of greenery for all the businesses around too, because you get down Main Street, it'll be a little harder for them to achieve the green space that's usually required of a business. And this really can help neighboring businesses achieve that goal. I really am a big fan of incorporating it that way versus trying to make them put planters or whatever they have to do to try to achieve it. So.
Commissioner Carrillo?
Yeah, I just love it. Good job, guys. It's contemporary. But it just is going to be a great place. We're all going to go shopping. The family's going to go 5 different ways, and then we'll all have some place to meet. Only one question is, I'm going to be there for a concert. Where are the restrooms?
That's a great question, and one of the, quite honestly, we struggle with the city, and we're not showing restrooms on the square at this point, just so we can wait and see how the programming progresses, see what the actual demand is. I mean, each one of the businesses around here, although we're not designing them for a 2,100 crowd, and you have to understand one of the reasons why the square is here and the programming it is so that people will frequent these businesses, will be patrons at those businesses. So hopefully they'll have facilities here. We will have facilities at City Hall if we're open.
On the main floor.
On the main floor.
Ground floor.
And if this is as successful as we think it's going to be, and I sure hope so, I hope that there's some point in the very near future that we're coming back to you and saying, this is programmed so much, and we've got such a demand for this that we'd like to talk to you about adding restroom facilities. And I think we've got opportunities to do that. It just, at this point in time, we'd rather wait and see how that plays out rather than putting them in there, potentially putting them in the wrong spot, or underbuilding or overbuilding. So I agree. Something hopefully we'll come back to you with in the future.
Mr. Siepert.
Will the association control all the activities of this square, the scheduling, like the farmer's market? Will they be in charge of doing that scheduling?
Yes.
And will there be a fee for those costs? Like renting a spot Will they charge?
My guess is they probably will, but that's, again, that's kind of out in front of where we are right now.
Okay. And I was going to ask the same question about the restrooms. That was my comment, too.
Mr. Johnston.
I think another thing to think about would be a pavilion, someplace you can get out of the sun or inclement weather if needed. Especially if you take your kids to a splash park there, rather than sitting out in the sun when it's 90 degrees, you have someplace in the shade to go hide. Possibly in the future could be looked at. My other comment would be with the chessboard pieces. Who's gonna take care of those and keep them out of the wetlands?
That's your responsibility.
Yeah.
Put them in your office.
Stand by a sign.
Other questions? Go
I
ahead.
guess just getting back to the park will be under the association's control. If the city, we do our tree lighting here on the corner, and obviously we will not have that corner anymore. And if we decide to hoist up a Christmas tree in the middle of that place, how, are we going to make sure that the city has some, I don't want to call them rights, but preferential treatment when it comes to our events?
Well, certainly, I think just using the Christmas tree lighting as an example, I mean, you'll have seen it elsewhere, Bay Shore, for example. I mean, that is an event that it's a major event, given the fact that it brings in a lot of people. And I can't imagine any circumstance under which the city would not be allowed to have a civic function such as the tree lighting for something that so obviously benefits the entire center. So, without being the owner, without saying 100% for sure, you can do what you want. I mean, that's something which is just so central to the function of that town square that I can't imagine it ever being not welcomed.
Okay, yeah, my other question was just kind of running in with the concert series, but, it's too early to tell where that would wind up. If it would, obviously, we'd probably like to take it over there, but again, we'd be working with another third-party entity, similar to how we work with the community center,
Sure.
although a little different matrix going on there with the community center in the city versus somebody that's out there and needs the revenue to maintain that park and what have you.
Jerry?
Well, I would just say that there's a reason we called it Drexel Town Square. We've talked from day one about the importance of the town square in drawing people there. I can't envision any case where we wouldn't want the Christmas tree to be someplace else. About the only thing we can't do here, I would guess, would be fireworks, because it would be a significant fire hazard to adjacent buildings.
Can't do them in a lot of places.
So, I mean,
We're
but
okay.
but everything else, we want to have public events here.
Yeah.
This is meant to mimic a downtown, and downtown, the heart of it was the public square.
No, agreed. I
So,
think
I
it's
mean-
a great concept. I just, as you go forward with these agreements, keep in mind what the city needs are and maybe involve celebrations along with that.
I mean, having been involved in this discussion for all of my career here now, this isn't an antagonistic relationship. This is a good relationship with developers, with us, all the partners we have. There isn't that back and forth like that. Everybody wants us to succeed, and they're going to do everything they can to make it succeed. But we all got to work together on it.
Having said that,
You're gonna.
I just got to ask. I mean, I appreciate everybody's right to vote yes or no, but we're trying to make a sign situation work. And it would be helpful if we knew why, and you don't have to say here, but if you wanted to tell the mayor why you voted against it so we can consider that. We're trying to make this as successful as possible. It takes an integration and compromise. So I can't reflect your concerns in our design if I don't know what those are, because we answered every question and then yet it passes on a 4-3 vote. That's very disconcerting, other than the engineer. I expected the engineer to vote no.
We will get those answers for you. Anything else before we move on to 4C? All right. 4C is a plan unit development amendment. We're going to review an amendment to the location of the Build-to zone of figures 4A and B of the general development plan, regulating plan for the Drexel Town Square mixed-use plan development district located at 601 West Drexel Avenue. All the addresses as listed. Tax keys multiple. Doug or Carrie?
Okay.
You got me tonight, might as well get your money's worth, right? This item that you have before you this evening, it actually plays hand in hand with what you'll be reviewing next, which is the plan review for the Four Points Hotel. Remember, as part of the Drexel Town Square Mixed-Use Plan Development District document that was approved by the Common Council upon recommendations of this commission, we made a distinction between first-generation proposals and what happens after that. With the first-generation proposals, they were designed concurrently with the entire site and with the level of detail and working with the project architects, and they were really presumed to be in compliance with that document, even though they may not have met the absolute letter of each one of those individual elements. But that was important because that general development plan that you saw that you adopted as part of that was those buildings. And if you recall, on the L building, which would have been on the east side of the town square, that was to be another mixed-use building, retail on the bottom, mixed probably residential on the upper floors. And that was the first generation development proposal. As the development team was proceeding along with this, and it's ironic because, that really one of the first buildings in isn't considered part of the first generation proposal. But as we started to talk about the hotel and its proper place within Drexel Town Square, we started to think about where that would be best located, whether it was best located maybe in the northwest corner or elsewhere on the site. Came down to, and I think it's the absolute right choice, to having it as part of the town square and kind of anchoring that leg of the town square. Provide you that mass. Remember we talked about the town square as being a four-sided room and having that 4 stories of mass on the east side of that. It brings, it's 108, 107, 108 new people to Drexel Town Square almost every night, which is important. It just brings new people in. Those folks are going to be doing shopping. They're going to be eating in the restaurants, drinking in the bars. They're going to be users of the town square itself. It just kind of brings a life to the town square that maybe you wouldn't have had if you had some other use there. So we thought that this was the right place for the hotel. And when applying the requirements of Drexel Town Square, what you see here is, in the red, is what we call a build-to zone. Pretty much everything you see has a minimum setback. That means you have to be set back at least this far. This is different in the sense that we're saying, no, you have to build to this line. You can't go back farther than that. And as we played with the geometry of the hotel and what they were doing, and they've done some special things with respect to the restaurant, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and kind of the patio area off the restaurant, it just wasn't making the numbers in terms of getting percentages along that build-to zone. So again, because it really wasn't a first generation proposal, we couldn't just say, oh, well, I mean, this is just can approve it that way. It does need to go before this commission, before this common council, and amend that build-to zone from a straight build-to zone. There's a mixed landscaping and building zone, which allows that building edge, that lot edge, to be held by not only building, and you'll see that this building holds it very nicely, but with also some landscape features, be it that outdoor patio, be that landscaping, and feel it accomplishes in many respects probably the goals of Drexel Town Square more so than the original building did in terms of holding that square. And that is why staff is making the recommendation that you recommend to the Common Council that the DTS MUPDD be amended to reflect this as a mixed landscape and building zone rather than a build-to zone.
Okay. Questions or comments? Commissioner Chandler?
So what I heard you say is that it was decided that a hotel would be best in that location, correct?
Yes.
Can you give me more detailed information on why? Because I know we had discussed a hotel before, but it wasn't right in the
Yeah, I guess we never had a specific location for it. We looked throughout the development and trying to find what the best place was at, not only from our motivations and activating the square or what have you, but from the motivation of the people who are going to be owning and running the business and where they felt the most appropriate location would be. Again, we felt that this was appropriate more, and it's not that it would have been inappropriate in other places, but we felt that it was appropriate here because it brings so much life, brings new people into the town square on a daily basis, exposes so many more people to Drexel Town Square than it would have been, for instance, had it been on the corner of Howell and Drexel.
So what was the plan for that space prior to the?
That was a mixed-use building,
Oh, okay.
retail on ground floor, residential above.
So were the idea of a rec area, so all that's gone now? Because we had discussions of a possible.
No, those discussions are still ongoing,
Okay. But
That's
just,
not that site.
not that site.
oh, this is different. Okay. So what streets are these? That would help me.
Main Street,
Okay.
Town Square Way, this is Sixth Street,
Oh, okay.
and this is Market Street.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Mahowski?
I was wondering, does a four-story building take away from City Hall and library complex? You know, certainly we've, you know, got some drawings where you have a clock tower. Depending on the size of this building,
It's 56 feet.
okay, do we then box out the clock tower? and-
Well, you're not really boxing out the clock tower. In fact, we've had some kind of perspectives, some rough perspectives done that show that the clock tower, which is obviously a very important organizing feature, not only for City Hall Library, but for the entirety of Drexel Town Square, is going to be in the 70s, I thought.
It's going to be higher than
With
the
a
building?
spire even higher than that. So from certain angles, it's probably going to partially shade that from your view. For instance, if you're looking from the corner of Howell and Drexel, I mean, you're going to see that before you see the tower. But we feel that the prominence of the clock tower, especially at night, is going to be something that wherever you are in Drexel Town Square in the area, you'll know it's there.
Yeah, I'm more interested in being able to see it when I'm driving down the road because
Yep.
I don't need the signs, even though they're going to be there, because some people do need them. I'm trying to go to a destination point, and that's going to, you know, direct me to a destination point.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? Alderman Bekavich?
More of a comment more than anything. The hotel took the place of the mixed-use building, and I think that's really a blessing in disguise. The mixed-use building obviously wouldn't have had the mass of a four-story building as the hotel does, which really provides you a really nice buffer from what is Myers parking lot. It boxes in and it really sets a boundary between what really is a commercial area and what is our town square. The second thing I think it does, which everybody's really overlooking, and Doug alluded to it, is it gives us foot traffic. You're going to have visitors coming in, and if we would have put it up in that northwest corner, say they would have chose that site, I don't know why it wound up where it did. When you're in a hotel, it becomes a deal where I'm going to walk to a restaurant, maybe you'll go to Main Street. You may not frequent a store that ends up somewhere else, maybe down towards west of Myers and that lot across from City Hall, or even visit City Hall. Not that it's a huge walk, but it just becomes inconvenient, whereas if you're in that hotel, you'll just wander out into the park. It's just that easy when you're across the street. I actually think it really did us quite a bit of a favor to be there, and I actually like that we kind of scooted it up, so to speak, because it's almost like New York City where everything's right there at sidewalk. You jump out of your car, in you go, and you don't have that setback that the Main Street's going to give you. I actually think it's kind of a blessing in disguise. As for it being 4 stories, like I say, I'm good with that. It's a good buffer. The clock tower is set right down Main Street, so I don't think it's really going to take anything away from it, not to mention it's 20 feet higher. So that's it for me.
Commissioner Johnston?
Are we changing the PUD to accommodate the hotel, or can they change their architect to meet the existing zoning?
Clarify that.
Can they change the building layout to meet the Build 2 zone?
They have looked at that, and we've worked with them to look at options which they could, in order to meet that requirement. It's really a percentage of that Build 2 zone for a number of reasons, one of which was some of the franchise requirements. That was not able to be done.
Good. Any other questions? Seeing none, motion on 4C.
Bukevich will make a motion that the Plan Commission recommend to the Common Council that the figures 4A and 4B in Drexel Town Square mixed-use Plan Development District General Development Plan and Regulating Plan be amended to replace the build-to-zone, BTZ, along the east side of Market Street with Mixed Building and Landscape Zone, MLZ, following a public hearing.
Smallsville, second.
Roll call.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Bukavich, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Smolsky, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Moving to 4D is a site plan review site building, landscaping, lighting, and signage sign plans submitted by Ann Smith, Oak Creek Hotel Group LLC for proposed 4 Points by Sheraton Hotel located at 7980 South Market Street in Drexel Town Square. Tax key number 813-9033-000. Carrie.
So the plans that we're bringing up now have actually been amended from the plans that you have before you. So while we bring those up, let me just say that some of the recommendations that are in here have probably been addressed by the new plans. So rather than actually going through my report, I would like to defer and have a presentation by representatives if they are comfortable with such.
All right, so these plans that I have are not the accurate ones.
And maybe just I can preface that and introduce the folks this evening. Given that this, and we just talked about the prominence of this location and the importance of this location, we've worked very hard and with the applicants and with everyone involved, the architects, to make sure that this building kind of addresses the needs of the city and the town square, and it's the little things, as you can imagine, that count. And that's why you'll see in your recommendation there, we weren't quite there as of Thursday, and we wanted to make sure that we were there. So we continue to work with them, and in fact have been working with them over the past few days to identify some issues and to get some resolution on some of those issues. So that's why you've got some new drawings this evening. The drawings, in fact, have addressed some of those issues with respect to the building elevations. So with that, I'd like to introduce to you Eric. Eric Nordness, who's with Solita Development, who will kind of run us through what their proposal is. We also have, and some of these folks, you're going to have to introduce yourself. Thank you.
Yeah. Eric Nordness, representing Oak Creek Hotel Group. Name, address? Or name?
Sure.
Sure. Eric Nordness, 1800 West Roscoe, Chicago, Illinois. We're excited to present to you our concept for the 4 Points by Sheraton Hotel that would be at Drexel Town Square. Our architects, Kaylor Slater, are here. Representative, introduce yourself.
David Plank, 111 West Wisconsin Avenue with Kaylor Slater.
We have other members of our team from owner's rep to development. We've been working hand in hand with Doug and his team in a frantic pace, if you will, to get our design completed, meet the standards, take what we have as a prototype architectural concept of 4 Points by Sheraton, adapt it to what the master plan calls for, while also balancing, because we have this meeting, and then we go to Starwood, the hotel company, and they say, we're franchising. And they say, you're taking what we've branded and developed, and we're allowing you to use that, and by doing that, we're going to deliver customers to you. So they clearly have a lot of things they always say on yes, no as well. So we think we've found a very good balance in that. We've had a really tight schedule because we do have our financing in place, and we could be one of the first people out of the ground here, and I have a timeline to get that closed. And Doug, your team's been working very hard to help me accommodate that, because I know we all want to get this going. And financing something of this size can be complicated and difficult, but we have everything ready. So in terms of what I'll do is I'll say a couple things, and I'll turn it over to Kaylor Slater to talk about what we've designed. Case in point of how constant the dialogue's been. You have renderings that show 2 days ago what the hotel looked like. So the comments are constructive, they're fast, they're real time. Our architects, to their credit, have been very quick to react, even to get some of the new facade revisions to accommodate all the requirements. So we're moving very quickly. We're excited about the project in general and think it's going to be a great fit for the community. I'll let you talk about the hotel, and then I can take questions and talk about other details.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, we can just walk through very quickly.
Can you give your name and you actually gave it already.
Gave it already.
We're good.
But David Plank again. This is the view looking from the northeast, so coming off Town Square. And this, we debated a lot about the actual siting of the building, what should be the front door, what should be the back door, where should the parking be, and all of that. And if after looking at it, flipping it every which way we could possibly do it, it made sense to have the parking lot and the main entrance to the east. Obviously, you want the main entrance off the parking lot. That's where the guests will primarily be arriving.
So this is if you're standing in the Myers parking lot looking
Across our parking lot, kind of where you're coming in the entry drive into our parking lot, looking towards the main entrance. Again, it's essentially the prototype design that comes from Starwood in terms of the general facade development. For the most part, the materials you see are the sort of orangish is a brick, an actual clay brick. The darker gray is a metal panel, which also comes from the prototype. One place where we did vary from the prototype to the benefit of Drexel Town Square is the lighter tan color. In the prototype, that would be EFS, and we just did not want to do an EFS building on this site. So that is a fiber cement panel, and again, we went to more of a commercial look fiber cement panel. It's similar to a hardy plank that you might see in a residential development, but it's that material, but it's scaled in a more commercial. I think 18 inches tall by 6 feet long, so it doesn't have that same residential look, but it's that same kind of durability of material. If you go to the next slide, this is the view from the Town Square side. So this is looking southeast. This is you're standing on the northeast corner of the Town Square looking to our building. And this is where you really start to see where we did deviate more from the prototype to address the Town Square. On the prototype, the gray box on the first floor, thank you. Okay, which button do I need? That one? Okay. All right, this gray box. In the prototype, this is a private dining room off the restaurant. Used for special events or just to expand the dining room space. But we really, and there's really no public entrance on this side of the building in the prototype. And we really, we're facing the square. We hope to get a lot of business off the square. So instead of having this as a private dining room, this is going to be the bar for the restaurant with a much more prominent entrance off the sidewalk. And in addition to that, patio seating that can serve that bar and restaurant. So that's really kind of helping bring the life, bring the park across the street, bring the square across the street. You'll see in the landscaping plan, very heavily developed landscaping along this portion where there isn't patio. We want a little fire pit out there, again, just to encourage people to linger out there, have some food, have some drinks. Again, we enhanced this facade. Again, on the prototype, this would normally be the back of the building and really just would have the EFS in the prototype or our cement board, fiber cement panel. Again, we've enhanced the amount of brick and metal panel and signage on this side of the building to really make it kind of a second front to the building. Next, please. This is the view from City Hall. And one thing that, again, developing this as a second front of the building, but because this is such an exposed site, there's no back to this site. And as you look at the site plan, we'll talk about that more later, but, it's a hotel. Somewhere there needs to be service. There needs to be a generator. There needs to be mechanical entrances, some service entrance, a dumpster. All those things have to occur somewhere. And again, there's really no back to this building. So that's reason for very heavy landscaping in this corner because all of those services kind of happen at the south end of the building. One of the kind of real-time changes we've made is adding some fenestration to the south elevation. In the first packet you saw, there were no windows on the south end of the building. Functionally, we don't need them and don't frankly want them. But we did agree that to dress up this facade a little bit. So these are a stack of windows in the exit stairs that mimic the windows at the north end of the building.
On that point, quick too.
Can you speak on the mic?
Yeah, sorry. The other real-time change you'll notice from yours is on the park side, if you will, or the square side, we added the brick on that to mimic the front of the building.
Right.
So you would notice on the original render, that was real-time as of yesterday. So these are enhancements we're putting into it to make it dual-sided.
Yeah. We've also increased the amount of glazing from the first submission that you had along the town square side. On the bar here, we had windows at the two corners, but we had solid metal panel in the middle of that bay. We've actually rearranged the interior, but the reason we had solid panel the first time around was that the bar backed up to that, so that if you were in the hotel lobby, you could look into the bar and see the actual bar from the hotel lobby. We've actually flipped that around so that the bar is on the back wall, which gave us the opportunity to add that much more glazing right up against the street frontage. Next. Again, this is just sort of a material board. The materials I've described, the brick, the fiber cement siding, metal panel, and then there will be some cast stone, limestone look trim in various places on the building. Next. Two-dimensional elevations, just describing what we've already talked about. Next. Again, next. Okay, here you see this is the north end of the building, the south end of the building, and again, this is where we added the windows on the staircase. We also, you can't see it behind the landscaping, but we also added a few windows into the employee break room as well. On the south facade, we do have the generator and the dumpsters, which are inside enclosures. The generator's within a brick enclosure right on the corner of the building here. The dumpsters are in a wood fence enclosure to the east of that. The service entrance is right in the middle here.
Would that landscaping that's shielding or hiding those service entrances be pretty mature at the time of planting, or would that be something we'd have to see grow for a few years to cover that?
I'll defer to my landscape architect for that question. And I think, do we have the landscape?
We do, yes.
Also name and address.
Pat Cresson, 125 South 84th Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, with Grafe. Yeah, we plant, the expectation would be those would be juniper trees, probably planted about 6 or 8 foot tall. Okay. So they'd be wide enough at pedestrian height.
Okay, thank you.
How high is the brick wall and the wooden enclosure for the dumpsters?
We're looking at 8-foot enclosures, I believe. Is that? 8 foot at the generator, 6 foot. Okay, 8 foot at the generator and 6 foot at the dumpsters. We went a little taller at the generator because the generator itself is about 8 feet tall. It's got a diesel tank underneath it, and we're only really required to do 6 feet, I think, but we wanted to do 8 feet in order to hide that.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Again, just another view from the entry drive and an idea of the entrance sign.
Just one thing I'll note about the entrance sign. We talked about signage, obviously, the first part of this meeting. There is going to be a standard for that, whether you call it a monument or pedestal sign, for the businesses within Drexel Town Square. Obviously, we're not going to change your logo or anything like that, but it would be my expectation that the final design would fall in line with the other retail signs in Drexel Town Square.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Okay, so floor plan, just to kind of orient you so you have a sense of what's going on the first floor. North is to the left in this drawing. So the parking lot off to the east with a covered entrance or a covered drive-through entrance, lobby, restaurant behind the lobby, and then this is the bar and the second entrance from the town square side. The remainder of the first floor, there is a small amount of meeting space, one roughly 1,200 square foot meeting room. This is not going to be a large conference hotel, but there is some meeting space in it. There are 6 guest rooms on the first floor, including one of our accessible rooms. And then down to the south end, we have public restrooms, fitness center, pool, and then the back of house spaces of the kitchen, the laundry, mechanical spaces, fire pump room, electrical room, and all that. Floors 2 through 4 are exclusively guest rooms, with a total count of 108 guest rooms. And then you see here, this is still the old plan. We have rotated the generator 90 degrees, so it sits a little tighter against the building. There was an issue of, there is a utility easement along the south end of the building, so by rotating the generator, we're able to clear that. Much more detailed floor plan. These are just the CAD or the Revit plans for the elevations. Next.
You can just jump in.
Oh, that's it?
I'm
Okay.
bringing up the site plan now.
Tom has a question.
You know, with this, the garbage area and the fact that you've got the wooden walls up 6 feet high or whatever, my concern would be 3 years after you're in, the wooden fence is going to have to be redone or whatever because, you know, that's how fences are. Any thoughts to?
It actually is a masonry enclosure. I think the gates themselves might be wood.
Is that what it is?
Right now, what we've submitted is the generator enclosure has a brick surround with wood gates. The dumpster enclosure is just a wood surround, or a wood fence surround and wood gates.
Yeah,
So
that's what we would ask you to consider making that masonry as well.
And
That's a
that's where
reasonable
I'm coming from. And I would also suggest the 8-foot height also to be consistent all the way around. We've got a new City Hall library with, it's going to be multi-story. And now people are coming to the facility and looking out the windows on that side and seeing garbage. And I don't know, for that site, I expect a little bit more myself.
Well, to the point that that's the city side of that, and most of that is office space that's public's not in. The library's on the other side, so they
Okay.
yeah, so they wouldn't really see it, but I get your point on the heights. Now, I don't know, architecturally, does it make sense to have the same height or different heights? Maybe having different heights looks better, I don't know.
it can be argued either way. And we do, behind the dumpster enclosure is where the employee break room is. So we do have windows in there, and we'd rather have them be able to.
Right.
They're clear story windows, but, you know, that would be the one mitigating factor there. Go ahead.
I think we're fine with that. That seems reasonable. And
Yeah.
if we got a brick enclose it, whatever the height is, it's fine.
Reasonable is good.
So this is, the site plan. The entrance into the parking lot off Town Square Way here. You can drive in, drive under the canopy or bypass the canopy, and then loop around to find parking spaces. As far as service, all service, we looked at whether service should come off Market Street or off the parking lot. And we decided, and working with Doug, that the city really doesn't want service coming off Market Street. So bring the service, again, down through the middle of the parking lot with heavier paving through here, and then a service drive that's distinguished by a different paving material to differentiate it with a rolled curb here. Losing my light here. Anyway, garbage trucks or delivery trucks, and we're not talking large delivery trucks, more like box trucks, can come in here, back in, back up to the service door at the south end of the building, and then get back out. Next, what else do we have? Let's see.
Yeah, go ahead.
Lighting, okay. Parking lot lighting are the same light fixtures that you just looked at for
Reforms.
general street lighting, okay? That's the only high form kind of freestanding lighting we're proposing on the site right now. We assume that along the sidewalk, along Market, that's actually not on our property, so there will be street light, the pedestrian scale street
There will
lights
be.
along there. We do need to, we haven't shown on this drawing yet, we will have a light fixture under the canopy and at each exit door. We're not at this time proposing significant additional lighting at the patio, probably some wall-mounted fixtures, just so that people can dine at night, not overkill, but we do need to work with staff to develop exactly what that will be still. And then the landscaping plan, and you know, again, extensive landscaping all around the site, throughout the parking lot. Again, if you want more detail about what's proposed, I can ask the landscape architect to come up, but just know that we're doing a lot of landscaping on this site.
A quick question about landscaping. Are we working with all of the partners at Drexel Town Square to make sure that we have consistency in the kind of trees we plant, or I mean, are we getting to that level?
Well, I guess by default, we kind of are, since Grafe is doing a lot of the work for the Drexel Town Square as well as the Four Points Hotel, so.
I mean, it's the same argument. Does everything have to look the same, or there's variety might be as good?
I mean, there might be some organizing features to it, but like you, I think I would rather see some variety there as well.
Okay.
Now, the one thing I will note as we talk about the site plan, and maybe just to introduce this, I mean, there's still a few site coordination issues that need to take place. I mean, obviously, this is a very complex development, being Drexel Town Square, and I know that the Four Points owners are going to continue to work with the adjoining property owners to tackle such issues such as snow removal and things of that nature. I think in your staff report, we identified an issue with respect to the setback along the east parking lot and the fact that there was a zero setback. I think it's important that you see, I don't have it as part of this, but I've kind of, if you can picture the property to the east of that, the big parking field, the property to the east of that, there's a 25-foot landscape area immediately to the east of this parking lot. So it's not parking lot against parking lot. So, I mean, there's a landscape buffer there. We just need to make sure that the two property owners coordinate the site so that snow removal, can happen without, putting snow on other people's properties or coming to some cooperative agreement on how to handle snow. And quite honestly, snow is going to be an issue that is going to be discussed for a lot of the properties in Drexel Town Square. And we're going to have to work with all the property owners to come up with some innovative solutions for that.
Yeah. And, just not to blow smoke, but I mean, the fact that you, Eric, and your team have worked so closely with staff, even in the last 48 hours, is a testament that you want to get this deal done and make this, like you said, be one of the first projects out of the ground there. And the changes I've seen from today from 3 days earlier are tremendous. They look fantastic. You incorporated some of the brick and the design elements that we have throughout Drexel Town Square, and I appreciate that when people come forward and don't just try to hardball us and say, this is our building, this is what 4 Points want. We're not changing. You guys actually stepped up and made those changes. And that's not easy to do because that costs money.
I appreciate that because we all want a successful project. This is hugely important for the community. It's also hugely important for us as the hotel owners, so we all have to be symbiotic. But the two teams here between planning and architecture have been working very, very hard to get this going so that we can get in the ground. But we're excited about the project. We have to go back to Starwood and we have to, strong arm them and say, accept some of these things. And we knew some of the things that they objected to heavily in terms of they get really sensitive about material, colors of materials, on that exiting stairway and how they want it perceived. So, but we've gotten them mostly on board with everything. We'll still have some hurdles, but we'll get through them. And we remain ready to be one of the first people on the ground. And we'll continue to work on some of those small details with Doug and his team to make sure this is very successful and, accommodates the general themes that are important to the community.
Excellent. Questions and comments from the commission?
Yeah, I'd like a little more explanation on the difference of what you're going to have, Doug, between the two Myers parking lot and this parking lot on the east side of the hotel.
Can you just bring up the site plan for Drexel?
You're talking about the 20-foot wide landscape?
20-foot wide, yeah.
25 foot.
That's technically not on their property, right?
No.
It's on.
That's on the adjacent property. Typically, if you're anywhere else in the city, I think for a parking lot setback, for perimeter parking lots, we require a 5-foot setback on either parking lot. So you're looking at a 10-foot landscaped area. Here, given the kind of the overall site planning that's taken place, I mean, we've accounted for at least twice that, 20 to 25 feet of landscaped area. It's just that instead of having half of it on one property, half on the other, all of it's on one property. So that's why we need the property owners to work cooperatively, just to ensure that things like snow removal take place, and there's some thought given to how it happens and where it happens. But from the standpoint of having a sufficient area to provide landscaping in accordance with the general development plan, I have no concerns about that.
Okay. Commissioner Chandler?
Can we just go through all 8 items? Because a couple of them I think were addressed, but I wasn't sure about the other.
Sure. What would you like to?
So let's start with the first item.
Okay.
So was this taken care of?
We continue to work with this. The fact that the generator has been rotated does remove some of the obstacles into that encroachment, and I do believe that discussions are continuing to make sure that the easement concerns are addressed.
You're talking, is that, and forgive me, I don't have the staff report in front of me, is that
The utility
the
easement.
utility easement and the kind of the turnaround area for the service vehicles, or is that a different item?
This is just the encroachment into the utility
Okay.
area, so the generator and the dumpster enclosures.
Thank you.
Yep, and we continue to work with that.
Okay. And then the 5-foot landscaping zone?
That's what Doug was just referring to just now with the landscaping, as there's a 0 setback for that, the parking lot there. There's landscaping that have been addressed in other plans, and we just want to make sure that that's coordinated. And that continues to happen as well.
Okay. And then the third item we addressed.
Correct.
About the fourth item. I didn't hear us discussing the concrete, removing.
This is the connection to the pedestrian path.
And maybe, I know that I've been working with Pat and Grafe on coming up with solutions for that, because if you recall, as part of the Drexel Town Square project, there was early on in the project, we removed a public street that would have gone between the Meyer property and what is now Clock Tower Place, in favor of a pedestrian path between the two of those. You see that in this area here? Again, that was kind of developed with that building L, that mixed-use building in mind. Given the new footprint of the hotel, that pushed the pedestrian path a little bit further south, still on the property, but what it requires is that the connection point to the property to the east moved a little bit. And those are the types of site coordination issues that I think we need to work through in order to make sure that they just line up in the correct place on either property. And also that this service drive that we talked about, we design it such that it is distinguished or screened to the extent that, I mean, it doesn't look like a driveway along the pedestrian path. And having talked with Grafe, I mean, they've come up with some solutions that would still retain the functionality of that service entrance, because it's got to go someplace. And also the aesthetic that we're trying to achieve with that pedestrian pathway and the views from not only Library and City Hall, from that undeveloped property just to the south of the hotel.
I would like to add just that as we discuss these options and the potential rerouting of that pedestrian path or dealing with the landscape buffer to the east, there is a possibility that we may lose a couple of parking stalls as we make those adjustments. I just want the commission to be aware of that.
Okay.
And then plans for signage?
Those will be reviewed separately. They have not been finalized at this point.
And that was, remember, I alluded to there being the design, the development-wide design for those pedestal signs. We talked about that, them fitting in with that formula for all of the developments within Drexel Town Square.
Okay. And then there were some questions about the parking lot landscaping.
I believe that's the conversation that we've been continuing to
That covers
discuss
that.
here, yes.
Okay. And the lighting plan, we went over that. And number 8 we went through. But I do have a question about number 8. So what are the numbers at now? I think before it was at 15%, 15.7%, the glazing.
It was, but I'm not sure what the revised number is.
We're at 22% now.
Okay.
Yeah, and that doesn't take into account any, that's purely 22% on the glazing. That doesn't take into account some of the offsets that we're allowed to do based on landscaping and some of the other things in the master plan.
And if you recall, and I think one of the really kind of interesting and neat aspects of this, how they've chosen to address the town square side is the patio area and the fireplace and the structure that they're providing to that, I think is something, it's one of those things that when we say, I mean, there's other elements that can make up for any percentage shortfall on glazing, I think that's a very appropriate element. And we're still working together on some minor touches to that and adding a little bit of color to the street, whether it's through awnings or canopies or umbrellas or just something to add a little activity, a little color to the street. And those are, again, details which I don't know that we need to hammer out tonight, but Eric has assured me that we'll work together to get some of those little touches in there, and we're happy with that.
I mean, you just hit the right point. They're bringing that restaurant and bar out as much as they can into the square, which is what we've asked those businesses that front the square to do. And again, first out of the ground, they're making the steps that we've asked them to take. That should be lauded. Commissioner Bakavich.
Just a couple of comments. Doug kind of hit on it. To take the place of the glazing, obviously you have that fire pit restaurant area. You're going to have to isolate that, whether it's with a wrought iron fence or something decorative that way.
Right, we do have a fence shown in the...
Yep, and I mean, it's really going to add to it like a sidewalk cafe type of thing. I really do like that. I think you guys have done a tremendous job with this, given the site and the challenges you have. Going back to item 4, we have eliminate that access point there. Do we really want to eliminate that? I mean, from the fire perspective, that gives you 2 ways in, Mike. Can you weigh in on that? And because all your utilities are going to be back there and probably, your main fire alarm and all that stuff. Do you really want to drive through the parking lot with a bunch of cars?
We did look at that. I think this is it's a rather unique setup. I think the entire Drexel Town Square project is kind of forcing us to, it's different from every other development we've had experience with in the city. The layout of the streets, the proximity to the roads, the height of the buildings, and we have to adjust and adapt to the new development. Is it the ideal situation? No. It isn't. I've had a chance to talk with David Mortensen, though, about the project. It is something that is allowable per code, the project they're doing. We do have all the access requirements met for the fire department. Obviously, once you sprinkler a structure, your access requirements change. Some of your hydrant requirements change, and it is a sprinklered structure. So they are within code on what they are doing with this. Would we prefer it? Obviously, we also can work within the parameters of the development.
Okay, I guess from my preference, if we could screen it, and I don't know, maybe if it's some kind of weird angled street with no signage, service entrance only, maybe it would provide you a better deal to have instead of having your garbage truck roll down the front of your entrance there through the parking lot, you may want them to slip in there. How do you guys feel about it?
I think it can go either way. We're fine. Our guests are, both sides of the building. You've got a double loaded corridor. So, 50% on each side. So 50% would see it from the other side, 50% on this side. I think actually my preference would be to come from the front at this point because so back to kind of alluding to what we're doing to connect to the square. So the typical 4 points prototype does not call for the size of bar and restaurant we have in this. In fact, they steer you towards lesser food and beverage in this type of hotel. We've pushed that boundary and we're adding food and beverage because we feel like it's a great amenity and it'll work well with the square, what's going on with City Hall, library. So it's good for us, obviously from a business standpoint, it's good for the community. So by building out that infrastructure of the bar, patio, restaurant, we foresee a lot of, customer use, pedestrian use on that side. So the back of the hotel becomes the front of the hotel. So when we were talking about the bricking requirement, some of that made sense to me. When you brought that, like, yeah, we should do that because essentially you've got a customer loading and check-in side, and I think we've got a pedestrian food and beverage restaurant. We've got a restaurant entrance and a hotel entrance. So I think it could go either way. I'm fine with this if if you're fine with it. That's, life safety is most important, so. But from a dropping off of things and servicing, we're fine the way it is.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
I'm assuming since the plans are changing that we're holding this item so we can review these plans?
I was gonna motion to move it through. We are on a timeline here for development, and I see no need to hold this in my view.
I agree. I think some of the things that are still open are not major issues. They've shown the willingness to do all the things we've asked them to do, at least to work with not only their group, but the Sheridan group. Holding it 2 more weeks to me makes no sense.
I don't know if I could just address that point, and I know it's a little, we always want everything completely buttoned up. And what we've tried to demonstrate is quick acting to responses, being very reasonable, trying to go above and beyond. For that, we're going to continue to do that. We want this to be a great hotel that fits in with the community. I don't think we really haven't seen I haven't seen eye to eye. We've seen eye to eye on everything for the most part, and we'll continue to do so. I do have a constraint, though, that is an important constraint for this happening, which is I need to have my financing going further with my bank. My bank will go somewhere else in the immediate future if I don't close with them. And one of those requirements is for you guys tonight to say that, hey, this is an entitled use. We approve this, contingent upon things when you don't have to, permit to get all the little details. But if I need to show that the city is, behind this concept, so I can close up when I need to on the financing side to get going. So if we're all in agreement, that's just something I want you to know, that we do have a pretty accelerated time frame for me to get it done, and I want to make sure I get it done.
Yeah, just to comment, I mean, there's nothing here that would preclude you from making a decision if that's what you want to do this evening. I think that they've shown a willingness to work with us, and in fact have worked very hard addressing some of those open issues that have satisfied the planning staff. And we're very comfortable with the Plan Commission taking the vote on this and acting to approve these site and building plans if that's what you choose to do.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Johnson?
There's a storm sewer that runs along the east property line there, butting up against the Myers property. Are you going to work on an easement then with Myers for that storm sewer? It's a private storm sewer, but any work that you need to do on it will need to be, on Myers property?
I see a conference of engineers talking, so.
Pat Crescent again with Grafe. There is an easement that will need to be run down that line. It will be shared on both properties, so.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Commissioner Johnston?
Back to the service drive and the access to the pedestrian walkway. I saw the turning radiuses, turn plates that you had. I don't feel that is needed. That is just an access point. That if they can pull in there, they can back out of there as well. It's a extra step that they can do. It's easier for them, but I think it takes away from the pedestrian access point and the pedestrian walkway, and rather see landscaping through there than a turn lane that comes out onto the pedestrian way.
What kind of deliveries would you be getting here, and how frequent?
Well, we'll be getting probably an every other day food and beverage delivery. I mean, that's going to be our inventory that's perishable and, turned over the most. So you're going to have box trucks with, you're going to have your seafood purveyor, you're going to have your beverage purveyor, those kind of things. I'd love to say that they're all, going to be easy for them to go in and back out like that. It's been our experience that you need to kind of make this fluid and easy for them. And when we got the recommendation that we needed that's pretty important for the operation of the hotel. I kind of get where you're at. Sometimes I wish, in our other hotel, like I say to our employees, it should work like this, and then it really doesn't, and I pull the last 2 pieces of hair I have out. So we'd really appreciate the flexibility, at least to work out how that transitions, and if that's, however we get there.
And in fact, I think, Pat, you have done some design changes to make that more palatable towards the pedestrian experience.
Yes, one of the things we were looking at doing, and David alluded to it, was some of the parking lots on that south end of the parking stalls in the south end may need to go away in order to make that path a little bit better. But the same token, the drive coming in, we're looking at how can we minimize all of those widths so that it doesn't look like a driveway. And two, we're looking at making it a different material than what's on here today. So it looked like more of a pedestrian plaza going straight to the pedestrian path. And then the area going back to the loading area would probably be a different material. So it wouldn't look like it was where you were supposed to be.
Yeah, I think Brian, and again, I don't want to speak for Brian, but when you have trucks backing into a pedestrian area, there is cause for concern, and I think that's something we got to be conscious about. Yeah. So how that transitions is going to be really important. Anything else? Any questions or comments before we get a motion on 4D?
Could I make a comment
Sure.
about that turnaround? We, as I stated, we did talk with David Mortensen about the access on that side of the building, and they are within the code requirements. And I guess we could argue if that road meets the strict requirements for a fire department access road, but let's say for a moment it does. If it's greater than 150 feet in length, it requires a turnaround approved by the AHJ, and that piece to the south does, to a certain degree, serve as that turnaround for the apparatus. I would just want to offer that from the fire department's perspective.
Good clarification. Thank you. Motion on 4D.
Bukavich will motion that the Plan Commission approve the site and building plans for the Four Points Sheraton Hotel at 7980 South Market Street until the following. Number one, at the
Help me out.
excuse me? Yeah, typo.
Dan, if I could?
Yes.
Since the motion is changing, my recommendation is that the Plan Commission approve the site and building plans for the Four Points Sheraton Hotel at 7980 South Market Street with conditions 1 through 8 as stated.
As Carrie said.
So noted. Second, anybody?
Malskill, second.
Roll call.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Bukavich, aye.
VDI.
Malski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good work. Any last-minute agenda changes?
Thank you, everyone.
Motion to adjourn.
Grillo moves to adjourn at 7:56.
Seifert, second.
Roll call.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Bukavich, aye.
VDI.
Malski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you. Have a great night. Tired of saying this, but stay warm.